The fake media is trying to silence us, but we will not let them, because the people know the truth. The fake media tried to stop us from going to the White House, but I'm president and they're not.
Good morning and welcome to AM Joy. Not even an event to honor military veterans is safe from Donald Trump's ongoing war with the media. His speech at a Kennedy Center event, which was sponsored by an evangelical megachurch, came the same day Trump stepped up his Twitter feud with the co-hosts of Morning Joe, tweeting, "Crazy Joe Scarborough and Dumb as a Rock Mika are not bad people, but their low-rated show is dominated by their NBC bosses. Too bad!" Exclamation point. His tirade against Mika and Joe, which began Thursday with ugly personal attacks against Mika, seems to be yet another low for a president who constantly seems to be redefining rock bottom. Mika and Joe summed up what many thought when they wrote in an op-ed for the Washington Post under the headline, "Donald Trump is not well," and they made this observation on their show Friday.
We have friends inside the White House that have told us over the past month they're getting more concerned about his emotional state. The guy that's in the White House now is not the guy we knew 2 years ago. The guy that's in the White House now is not even close.
And now some Democrats are going even further. According to Yahoo investigative reporter Michael Isikoff, 25 House Democrats are backing a bill that would create a congressional panel that would declare the president incapacitated and, under the 25th Amendment, force him out of office. But why the urgency now? Has Donald Trump suddenly taken a turn for the worse? Or is his offensive behavior actually just more of the same old Trump that we've heard many, many times before?
You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the...
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists.
She gets out and she starts asking me all sorts of ridiculous questions. And, you know, you could see there was blood coming out of her eyes. Blood coming out of her wherever.
Written by a nice reporter. Now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. So we talk about the media, and by the way, some of the media is terrific, but most of it, 70%, 75%, is absolute dishonest, absolute scum.
And joining me now is Frank Rich, writer at large for New York Magazine and author of the latest cover story, How a Presidency Ends. This is a great piece, by the way, Frank Rich. It's
Thank you.
Really, 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 really good. I think everyone should take the time out to read it, because one of the things it did, I was telling you in the break, I just watched Get Me Roger Stone. Right. And when you watch that and read this together, they sort of give you a companion understanding of the era we feel like we're rerunning. It almost like we're rerunning the Nixon era with a different Nixon. But I'm going to get to that in a minute. I want to give you the chance, in your inimitable way, to react to Donald Trump's latest opus. And this is his tweet this morning against CNN. It has GIF in it, or GIF in it, I say GIF. And here it is. He tweeted, you see that? That is Donald Trump when he was a character on TV performing on WWE. And he's retweeted a GIF of himself, or tweeted out a GIF of himself doing that. And the tweet simply says, "Fraud News CNN FNN," which means Fox News Network. What is that?
It's insanity. I mean, it really is. I mean, obviously, it's an attempt that might be successful to drum up violence against journalists, which is something he's been doing right along. And by the way, this whole thing that he's a different person than he was 2 years ago, no, he's the same person. It's just now that's toxically combined with power and a 24/7 platform. Yeah, and Donald Trump has defended his really sort of lack of dignity on social media. He just tweets ridiculous things on social media that any other president, if you put that in a statement, people would think the person was losing their mind. But he tweeted, "My use of social media is not presidential, it's modern day presidential." He gets away with it. He doesn't even know what really modern media is. Apparently, he doesn't really know how to email. So he's discovered this one toy that, as Bill Maher keeps pointing out, he probably uses in the toilet, and plays it to it fairly well, and that's his idea of social media, and someone has told him that line, Steve Bannon or someone. But here's the thing. This guy is now going to meet with Vladimir Putin, who is either an American adversary or his boss. But either way, this is a really crucial moment for this country. Forget about even Washington and healthcare and all of that. We have this guy going to talk to Putin.
And I mean, that is the thing, is that Donald Trump is two things. He's sort of funny, right? And you could sort of read his tweets as entertaining and amusing and sort of weird, and you can laugh at it. But there's also kind of funny, scary, because even though the presidency doesn't wield as much power as most Americans think it does, there is still a lot of power invested in that office. It's not just that he can embarrass us on a foreign stage. There's a lot of damage he could do. Should Americans be laughing at these tweets or afraid?
You shouldn't laugh at violence in this pressure cooker and this violent America of the moment and this politically angry. That's not funny. And the truth is, you're absolutely right. His power is limited. Witness the fact that he's gotten nothing done in Washington, but it isn't limited on the foreign stage and in foreign policy. And he is leaving our shores to do God knows what. I know.
And former Richard Clarke, who was the famous hair on fire guy who tried to warn George W. Bush about 9/11 to no avail. He was on Bill Maher on Friday night, and this is what he said about his fears about Donald Trump.
The president's going to meet with Putin next week. His advisors will not even say that he's going to bring this up.
No, he won't.
Yeah, he doesn't, because he was the beneficiary.
Yeah, of course. That's why he's not investigating it.
Right.
That's why he's not doing all the things we need to do to make sure it can't happen again. This is the 21st century equivalent of having the Russians land Marines on the New Jersey shore.
Right.
You know, they invaded our country, they invaded our political system, and they won. And he doesn't care because he won.
I mean, the Occam's razor explanation, you know, presuming Donald Trump, you know, has the same love of country that anyone else would, is that Donald Trump benefited from what the Russians did before, and like Nixon, will do anything to win and wouldn't mind benefiting from it again. Is that an unfair assumption?
Not at all. Furthermore, we have to wonder if this commission that he's created about voting fraud, which I know you're talking about later, is an instrument of the Russian government to try to affect, for all we know, the 2018 and 2020 elections. This may be part of the process. For all we know, if I may be slightly bold, this might be what he and Putin are talking about, not the past.
But I mean, well, even if it's just on his own, if you look at the combination of traits that you see in Donald Trump, this win-at-all-costs mentality, that it doesn't matter how you win as long as you win. So you're willing to accept Russian intervention if it helps you win. It feels like you're willing to suppress lots and lots of votes, millions and millions of votes, and violate the rights of millions of Americans as long as you win. Are we setting ourselves up for a 2020 that could be even scarier and Watergate on triple amounts of steroids as 2016?
Maybe, but we don't know yet. That's a long time away, and my theory of the case is that Trump's not going to last that long.
That is the point I want to stop you on, because in this piece, which, again, I highly recommend, and Watergate didn't become Watergate overnight either. You walk the readers through the timeline of how long it took for the public opinion about Nixon to even catch up with the facts that were in the newspapers, and how long his base hung on. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, for instance, in July of 1973, which is now 13 months after the Watergate break-in. By that point, Nixon's Attorney General and campaign manager, John Mitchell, had been indicted. There had been the famous 2 months of live televised Watergate Senate hearings led by Sam Ervin that most of the country watched, 71% of the country watched. Every kind of, the Washington, Woodward and Bernstein reported that the Watergate break-in was just a tiny fraction of an enormous criminal operation by the White House. As people went away that summer, this time in 1973, 22% of the country thought that Nixon should be removed from office.
Wow.
And constituents were saying they were tired of Watergate. His approval rating was in the upper 30s, sort of where Trump is now.
Like where Trump is now. And Nixon employed the same tactics, you know, going to the well of white working class voters, but also his take on the media. I want to play a soundbite from October of 1973. This is at the height of Watergate. This is Richard Nixon talking about the press.
I have never heard or seen such outrageous, vicious, distorted reporting in 27 years of public life. I'm not blaming anybody for that. Perhaps what happened is that what we did brought it about, and therefore the media decided that they would have to take that particular line.
At least he did it with more style than the current guy. But it was exactly the same line.
Yeah.
The media is the enemy. He used to tell his aides to write that on the blackboard. The media is the enemy. They were trying to steal an election that he had won in 1972 and reverse the thing.
Yep.
He also, every time he denied a Watergate story, he said, there are 4 or 5 investigations that prove I'm exonerated.
Yes.
So everything that he did is being done now.
Yeah.
But, you know, from that point in July 73 till when he resigned was another 13 months.
Yeah.
And what made the difference when he did resign? Republicans finally, not brave Republican leaders. They didn't exist then any more than now, but congressmen scared for their lives as the midterms approach.
It's all about self-preservation, and
Totally.
That's what you counsel. To be patient, because their sort of spinelessness will turn to outright terror when they think you'll impair their right to get their re-election.
This time next year.
This time next year. Frank Rich, it's always such a treat to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Great to talk to you, Joy.
Thank you very much.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.